Wow, so Crackdown 3 is finally here. Does it live up to the hype? Let's find out. So Crackdown 3 is a very pleasant surprise in this week of highly anticipated titles. Most people were not expecting much from this long-delayed title that ended up launching the same day as Far Cry New Dawn, Metro Exodus, and Anthem's early access. With a lineup like that, most people would think that Crackdown 3 was doomed to fade into the background of these highly anticipated titles. But fortunately for Crackdown, just about every one of those titles had its own controversy this week that detracted from people playing it. Crackdown 3, other than being delayed for the longest time, had its own looming question hanging on over its release. Will Microsoft deliver on its fully destructible environments? The answer was yes and no. Yes, we got fully destructible environments, but no, those environments were not in the co-op game campaign. They are regulated to a separate game application called Wrecking Zone, which I'll talk about in depth a little bit later. So let's focus on what was delivered. Crackdown 3 feels like the true sequel to Crackdown. It feels like it picks up right after the Crackdown 1 ended, with the agency's agent experiment being a mass success and moving on to new cities to clean up. Terry Crews does a great job of bringing the character Agent Jackson to life. He did so well that his character actually was a last-minute addition to being a playable character. So like most games, you start out with all your powers being fully buffed up, and then boom, they're all stripped away from you, and you have to start from scratch. And we ended up having to start with what we called Tiny Terry. And we ran around as Tiny Terry doing what Crackdown does best, collecting orbs and doing activities and blowing stuff up. Like I said, this game is very much more Crackdown. So if you like the first one, you enjoy that gameplay loop, you got more of that here. You'll have fun hunting down the orbs, and thank God they don't move like they did in Crackdown 2, because that was a real annoyance. There's a total of 750 agility orbs, 250 hidden orbs for you to find. That's a lot of orbs. Rooftop races, driving challenges are back again as well, and you get 3 agency vehicles, although you now have to unlock them through doing the driving challenges versus having all 3 at the start. The other nice addition was boss fights. The boss fights in the first game really didn't have any challenge. You could kill each boss with the same strategy. Either punch them in the face a bunch of times or shoot them a lot. Bosses in Crackdown 3 are a little bit more nuanced than that. You'll have to use some different strategies, considering some bosses will be in mechs, some bosses will not even be human. There's a little bit more that has to go into it. So that actually gives the game a little bit more variety and makes it a lot more fun. The number of targets you go after in the game is reduced from previous entries, but they have expanded the activities in the world. Instead of going after small-time bosses, you have objectives to take over, car depots, train stations, tower captures, and destroy security or chemical plants. Taking out these targets will weaken and then draw out the boss that you need to take out. So that is also another big change. Instead of just beelining it straight to the boss and killing them if you wanted to, you actually do need to draw them out by completing these objectives. All these activities with the orb hunting makes for a world that has tons to do. Crackdown 3 delivers on the Crackdown experience that everybody remembers and wants to play again. So let's talk about Wrecking Zone. Wrecking Zone is a separate game app that holds the fully destructible world and the competitive multiplayer game modes. Unfortunately, it launched with only 2 maps, 2 game modes, Deathmatch and Territories. And I should say Team Deathmatch. There's no 1v1 at all. After playing Wrecking Zone for a while, I realized why this feature did not make it to the full campaign. Everything but the bottom floor is destructible in this game mode. So imagine how you tell a story about taking down a corporation with bosses who live in a giant tower in the middle of the city. How would you tell that story if agents could just run in and just destroy everything and level the city? Especially a story where you're supposed to be the good guy. And the other part of that is, let's say I play that game, I destroy the city. The city has to reset itself when I play again, right? Because one, there's orbs at the tops of buildings. If I destroy a building, the orb doesn't fall, it's still there. I have to have a way to get up there. So the narrative challenge of putting that feature in the game and then having to come up with a reason why it resets exactly the same, why it resets so quickly, would kind of pull you out of the experience. So I can understand why they removed that. Overall, the Wrecking Zone gameplay is fun, and the destructible environments do add a new element to the gameplay flow. But this needs more polish. The environments don't look as great as they do in the main game. The maps, there are only 2 of them, so there's not a lot of variety there. And those 2 maps are designated to each mode. So there's 1 map for Deathmatch and there's 1 map for Territories. They need to add more to this. Because it launched with those lacking features there, This feels more like this was a panic move on Microsoft's part to say, hey, we need to deliver on our promise. If we don't deliver on that, this game was going to be dead on arrival. So they do deliver on it, but in a different way, and in a way that time will only tell if they're going to support this by adding more modes and more maps to it, or if they're going to just give us what they gave us and pretend it doesn't exist after this. Overall, compared to the other games that came out this week, I find myself constantly going back to Crackdown 3. The Crackdown 3 experience is constant fun, and I enjoy playing it, where the other games this week have been bogged down with loading screens or repetition or reusal of environments. Crackdown 3 is just fun. Playing the other titles that were released always had me hitting a brick wall, either with the poor pacing or the breaking combat. If you have Game Pass, you should play this game. If you don't have Game Pass, this title and the other main Microsoft exclusives make it worth the $10 a month. If you're a fan of the original Crackdown, you'll enjoy playing this game. If you're not a fan, this is still the quintessential Crackdown gameplay loop that we all enjoyed from the first game. So bring your friends, bring your families, jump in and have some fun blowing stuff up with Terry Crews and Crackdown 3.